The streetlights flickered to life as red and blue flashes tore through the calm of my new neighborhood, casting shadows like a scene ripped from a thriller. From my Lee VYing room, I watched, heart-pounding, as two police officers marched towards Susan Harper's immaculate graystone house. Their radios buzzed sharply in the cool autumn air of Maple Grove. Susan stood on her flawless lawn, her face a mix of shock and defiance, as an officer dangled an empty Amazon box in one hand while legal papers fluttered around her prized rose bushes, catching on thorns like trapped secrets. This wasn't just any neighborhood drama. Susan, the iron-fisted HOA president, had ruled our little corner of Maple Grove like a queen for months, and I'd been her favorite target. Now, she was about to face the consequences of crossing a line she didn't even know existed. Let me take you back to how this all unraveled. 4 months ago, in the spring of 2024, I moved into my first home in Maple Grove, a quiet suburb outside Chicago. The streets were lined with oak trees, the yards were pristine, and the neighbors waved like they meant it. I thought I'd landed in paradise. But paradise came with Susan Harper, a woman in her late 40s who wore tailored blazers and a smile that felt like a warning. She was the HOA president, and she treated Maple Grove like her personal empire. Susan knocked on my door the day I moved in, clutching a thick binder of rules, 53 pages of do's and don'ts. She was polite at first, almost warm, offering tips on settling in while subtly eyeing my unpacked boxes through the doorway. "We keep things orderly here," she said, her voice honey-sweet but firm. I nodded, thinking she was just enthusiastic. But her VY sits didn't stop. They got worse. Soon, Susan was at my house weekly, Leah VYing notes about my mailbox being a half-inch too low or complaining that my porch light was too modern for the neighborhood's aesthetic. Once, she banged on my door at 7 a.m. to lecture me about the unacceptable shade of green I'd chosen for my window shutters. She turned nitpicking into a sport, and I was her main event. Then my Amazon packages started vanishing. At first, I brushed it off, maybe a mix-up, maybe porch pirates dipping into the suburbs. Amazon sent replacements, and I moved on. But when it kept happening, always during the day while I was at work, I got uneasy. My neighbors whispered about similar issues, but they clammed up when Susan's name came up, their eyes darting like they were scared of her shadow. The real trouble started when I was expecting a package that wasn't just important, it was life-changing. My aunt had passed away 8 months earlier, Leah VYing me in charge of her estate. After months of legal wrangling with greedy cousins, I needed to submit critical court documents to seal the deal. My lawyer had them sent via Amazon Secure Delivery, complete with signature confirmation. These weren't just papers. They were subpoenas, affida VYTS, EVY dense irreplaceable, and due at the courthouse by a hard deadline. I took a day off work to be home for the delivery. From my window, I saw the Amazon truck roll up on September 15th, 2024. The driver set the secure envelope on my porch, snapped a photo, and left. I was at the door in seconds, but the package was gone. Poof, like it had never been there. My stomach churned as the stakes hit me. Missing this deadline could cost me thousands in legal fees and tank the whole estate. I stood on my empty porch, fury building. Neighbors had dropped hints about Susan's odd habits. Mrs. Larson, who lived across the street, mentioned seeing Susan prowling yards at dawn, supposedly checking for violations. Mr. Patel, next door, said he caught her snapping photos of his recycling bins, claiming she was monitoring compliance. It was starting to add up, and it wasn't pretty. I wasn't about to let this slide. I ordered a discreet security camera and set it up in my front window, aimed right at the porch. Then I called my lawyer, who was Lee VYD. Those documents weren't just valuable, they were protected by federal law. Stealing them was a serious crime, not some petty theft. He arranged for replacements to be sent. Same secure Sare VYC. This time, I was ready to catch the culprit. On September 20th, 2024, I took another day off and waited. Around 1:30 p.m., the Amazon truck pulled up. The driver placed the package, took his photo, and drove off. I glued my eyes to my phone, watching the camera feed. 5 minutes later, there she was, Susan Harper, strolling down the sidewalk like she hadn't a care of the world. She glanced around, then sauntered up my driveway, bold as brass. She snatched the package, checked the label, tucked it under her arm, and walked back to her house. My camera caught every second in high-def clarity. My hand shook as I dialed 911. I told the dispatcher this wasn't just a stolen packagite involved court documents, a federal offense. Within 15 minutes, Officers Reynolds and Kim were at my door. I showed them the VY-DAO and explained the document's importance. Their faces hardened when they heard court papers. Officer Reynolds said tampering with legal mail, even unknowingly, could land someone in serious trouble. They asked me to come with them to Susan's house. When she opened her door, her smile was all sugar, but it cracked when she saw the officers. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake worry. Officer Kim got straight to it, asking if she'd taken anything from my porch. Susan's performance was straight out of soap opera. She clutched her chest, gasping, "Me? Steele? I'm the HOA president. I protect this neighborhood." The officers weren't swayed. Officer Reynolds asked to search her house. Susan hesitated, her eyes flickering, but she let us in, babbling about how this was all a big misunderstanding. She even mentioned starting a package safety initiative to prevent theft. We found the package in her kitchen, sitting next to her espresso machine like it was part of the decor. The secure envelope was unopened, the document safe inside. Susan stared at it, then spun a wild story about finding it blowing around in the street and bringing it inside to keep it safe. She'd meant to tell me, but forgot. Officer Kim held up his phone, showing her the VY-DAO timestamp for walking off my porch with the package minutes after delivery. No wind, no loose papers, just theft, plain and simple. Susan's face flushed crimson as her lies unraveled. But she wasn't done. She doubled down, pulling the HOA card. "As president, I have the right to inspect deliveries for prohibited items," she snapped. "Some packages violate our covenant's lawn decor, paint cans, you name it. I'm protecting property values." Her voice rose, shrill and desperate, as she ranted about her duty to Maple Grove. Officer Reynolds cut her off. "HOA rules don't trump federal law," he said flatly. Stealing mail was a crime, and messing with court documents made it worse. Susan's bravado crumbled, her face going pale as the truth sank in. She tried every excuse in the book claiming she was shielding me from scams, insisting her HOA role gave her implied authority, even hinting I'd faked the whole thing. But the officers had seen this before, a small-time tyrant drunk on power. Word spread fast. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, watching as Susan's kingdom fell apart. She noticed the crowd and went into overdrive, shouting that this was a witch hunt orchestrated by rule breakers who hated her leadership. She demanded to speak to the police chief, threatened to sue, and swore she'd been framed. But Officer Kim had heard enough. He told her she was under arrest for mail theft and obstruction of justice, serious charges amplified by the court documents. Susan's meltdown was epic. She screamed that I'd ruined her life, that I was a liar who couldn't handle basic community standards. She even demanded the officers arrest me for slander. Her voice echoed through Maple Grove as they read her rights. The neighbors watched, stunned, as the woman who'd terrorized them with petty fines and endless inspections was cuffed and led to the squad car. As they walked her away, Susan made one last stand, yelling to the crowd that she was protecting their investment, that without her, Maple Grove would fall to ruin. She vowed to fight the charges and return stronger than ever. But no one was listening. The neighbors, free from her reign, exchanged looks of relief, some even smiling for the first time in months. A month later, on October 25, 2024, the hammer fell. Susan was convicted of mail theft and tampering with court documents. The federal judge didn't hold back, sentencing her to 20 months in prison and a $20,000 fine. Her gasp filled the courtroom, a final note in the collapse of her empire. The woman who'd ruled Maple Grove with an iron fist was done, and justice felt like a long overdue VY Tory. But here's where it gets messy. Was Susan just a control freak who got in over her head? Or was she a calculated criminal hiding behind her HOA badge? Should the neighbors have spoken up sooner? Or were they too scared of her wrath? And what about did I go too far by setting a trap? Or was it the only way to stop her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Susan deserved her fate? Or was the punishment too harsh? Have you ever dealt with an HOA tyrant like her? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep this debate going because stories like this don't end in the courtroom.